Welcome. My name is Carrie Landsberg, Director of Education and partner with American Way University. You are about to begin viewing our course titled Meshing the Generational Gaps. We'll be focusing on building a bridge between two critical generations, being the baby boomers and millennials. We hope you enjoy this course and find it meaningful. Let's first start by helping you maneuver through Brainshark, which is the software hosting our online course. On the left-hand side, you will see a table of contents showing an outline of what we'll discuss throughout the course. You can go back to any slide at any point simply by clicking on the slide title and replay as needed. You will also see an attachment tab which will house links to the other segments in this course, Part 2 and Part 3. It will also house supplemental videos we will be showing and a key learning points document that you can view and print if you desire. You may hide the table of contents if you find it distracting. Simply click on the squiggly bar to the right to either hide or show the table of contents. Brainshark provides several tools to enhance your learning experience during this course. In the lower right-hand corner, you will see 4 arrows which will allow you to maximize your screen for easier viewing. You'll also see a question mark that allows you to email a question to the presenter, which is myself, Carrie Landsberg. You can view my slide notes as I present. You can print slides, which would also include the slide notes. And you can also ask for help from Brainshark, although I would advise you to call American Way University first to problem solve any difficulties you might be experiencing. Do that by either emailing me directly through the question mark option or call us at 608-566-1500. Enjoy the presentation. Do you ever stop to think about the impact that events and life experiences have on the way we think and react to situations around us? We are now at a place in the workforce where we have 4 generations working together at one time. While it can be interesting to learn from one another, it can also become a source of conflict for certain generations who vary greatly in their values and what they deem as appropriate work ethic. This session will run as a 3-part series discussing the communication gaps in each generation and focus on 2 critical generations who tend to experience more conflict, being the baby boomer and millennial generations. In Part 1 of this series on meshing the generational gaps, we'll define the 4 main generations and share key events and experiences that have shaped and molded the way people think, act, and the values they hold so dear. We'll highlight the differences each generation has in their core values and why that can lead to conflict with one another. We'll end this first session by wrapping up our key learnings and transitioning into Part 2, which will focus more in depth on why the baby boomer and millennial generations tend to have conflict in the workplace. Let's begin by defining the timeline for each generation and see which generation you fall in. Traditionalists are our oldest generation in the workforce and were born between the years 1922 through 1945. Baby boomers follow next and were born between 1946 and 1964. Generation X was born between the years 1965 and 1979. And our youngest generation in the workforce is the millennial generation, who can also be referred to as Generation Y. This group was born between the years 1980 and 2000. Let's talk more specifically about the events and experiences that shape each generation. We'll begin with the traditionalists. You can see by these pictures the hard life this generation experienced. They grew up during the Great Depression, and there were limited resources available. Oftentimes, there wasn't enough food to feed the large families they had to provide for. They were savers of everything, and made good use of all their possible resources. And that mindset to be frugal and resourceful continued throughout their entire lifetime. I know my mother-in-law would save plastic containers from Cool Whip to Chip Dips and had a whole stack of ice cream pails in her pantry. To me, it just looked like cheap plastic taking up space. To her, they were handy containers that could serve many purposes and often did time and time again. It's all in our perspective and where we place our values. This generation lived through other tough political and life-changing events, including the New Deal, World War II, and the Korean War. Seeing the events of war up close and personal will certainly change a person, and oftentimes changed entire families from this generation. We'll move on to discuss the baby boomer generation. As you see in these pictures, this is a generation of excitement, possibility, and free love. This group grew up experiencing the civil rights movement, the sexual revolution, the Cold War, space travel, and assassination. Things started to change a bit as Generation X started to appear. There was a great deal of uncertainty happening in our world, as well as a movement towards women's liberation. The generation was also shaped by another war, being Desert Storm, and the energy crisis. There was a lot of change taking place as children from Generation X were growing up. You will notice very different images with our last and youngest working generation, the millennials. What do you see that is different in these pictures from other pictures? Is it the technology that's present in these photos that we didn't see with previous generations on the previous slides before? This generation is referred to as the first digital natives, which means they have never been in the world without technology. They have always had it at their fingertips and are a generation who is extremely socially connected. The picture of this baby tells it all. They not only play with real cell phones, they know how to operate them at a very young age. Preschoolers are accessing games and other learning activities online and enter school many times knowing how to operate a computer. This generation has also witnessed loss of security and greater instability with the onset of school shootings and the sensationalized bombings like the Oklahoma City bombing. The way we operate as a society has also greatly changed with this generation. For the first time ever, we have become a child-centric world, meaning all that we do is centered around our children. Our daily schedules revolve around the many activities our children are involved with at school, in local clubs, and in communities. In previous generations, this was not the case. Parents worked and children had chores to help maintain the homes and their farms that they were growing up on, and schedules were not often centered around the children. What do you think this type of focus has on the mindset of the millennial generation? And how do you think that impacts how they might approach their relationships at work and their jobs overall? The values from each group are different and have a great impact on shaping the decisions each group makes. Let's first talk about the traditionalist values. In regards to money, this group would always pay with cash and were big savers. If they didn't have the money to make a purchase, they simply did not make it. Family was very traditional in this group. Most families had the husband working outside of the home, while the wife would stay back and take care of the children and keep their home running smoothly. It was a nuclear setting with family dinners around the table each night, and Sundays were kept free for larger family gatherings. This generation was used to communicating in person, face to face, as that's the means they had available, and it's still the preferred method of communication today, one-to-one communication. Work was an obligation for the man of the house to provide for his family. It was not always seen as an exciting adventure, as with some other generations, but something to be taken seriously, so there was financial security for one's family. This generation viewed work more of a duty before pleasure. Now let's take a look at the core values of the baby boomer generation. In regards to money, this group significantly changed how society makes purchases. This generation really kicked off the use of paying with credit. They are a generation who bought what they wanted, and as a society, we grew to have much more debt than previous generations ever had. The traditional family unit began to change. More divorces were taking place, and families started splitting apart. Mothers began to work outside of the home more as well. In terms of work, this generation is very much about the excitement and adventure found in life, as they were very career-focused. They made sacrifices in their personal lives to get ahead in their career. There were many possibilities to explore, and the limits were endless in terms of how far they could go and what they could achieve. For communication, they made themselves available any time of day because they viewed work as an exciting adventure. There weren't many boundaries to separate personal time from work time. The characteristics of this group can be described as optimistic, always looking for the possibility in things, involved, work-centric, and notice the big difference in this focus versus the child-centric focus our millennials grew up with. The baby boomers were also viewed as competitive, goal-oriented, and self-reliant. You will start to see bigger shifts in values as we look more closely at the Generation X core values. In regards to money, this group started to think more towards the future and began to save once again. It was with this generation that the advent of 401k retirement options started to take hold. This generation puts more thought and action into saving for retirement, college funds, and future plans. As this group was growing up, many children were living in divorced arrangements, sharing time between different homes. In many situations, both parents were working full-time, and the phrase latchkey kid was given to those children who came home from school and were on their own for several hours while mom and dad were still at work. While Generation X is committed to their career and their jobs, they are not as readily available day and night as the baby boomer generation was and continues to be. They began to draw a line saying, when it's after hours, that is my time, and I don't want to be contacted during that time. I want to keep that for my personal interests and commitments. In terms of work-related values, Generation Xers appreciate more of a hands-off management style that allows for greater freedom and creativity and gives them a sense of greater responsibility for their roles. The characteristics of this group can be described as more skeptical. With many changing situations in their home environments, they tend to question a bit more. More informal than previous generations, they definitely like to have fun. They are a highly educated group, large activists, highly tolerant, and diverse. The shifts in values continue to grow wider apart in this youngest working generation from our first two generations. In regards to money, this group has witnessed immense amount of change and uncertainty in their lives, and they tend to have a mindset of focusing on today and living in the moment, as there are no guarantees for what tomorrow will bring. They earn their money to spend for the present time for the most part. The traditional family, as previous generations knew it, is pretty rare for this youngest generation to have intact. These people were children who were raised in a wide variety of family arrangements, including single-parent homes, grandparents or other relatives raising children.